Hello again from my front porch. Welcome to Easter Sunday 2025. Yes, that's why I'm nicely dressed up for Easter Sunday. I did have a chance to, when I was grabbing Easter lunch today, well, granted, I was trying to do it quickly because I've got still some work to get done here in my home office before I head out on a trip tomorrow. And I did run into the Easter Bunny. And that was kind of fun. But you know, as fun as the Easter Bunny is, and as fun as the Easter eggs are, and all of that, yeah, I am of the belief that Easter is the time still to commemorate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, it is not the actual day that it happened, because, well, first of all, Easter moves around every year, so of course it's not commemorating the actual day. And you know, obviously, you can do the research. You know that to some extent it's making use of other pre-existing holidays that some pagan societies had, and the church took them and said, let's do this instead. You can pick apart things as you want. What I know is Easter is set aside as a commemoration of this wonderful event that, yes, I do believe in. And this is not me trying to preach my beliefs to you. However, our country did just today, is now in the midst of celebrating a holiday that has its foundation in religion, in a specific religion, because the resurrection is about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who, even though he was Jewish, it's not a holiday commemorated by Jewish people. It's not a holiday commemorated by Muslims. It's not a holiday commemorated by other religions. It is a uniquely Christian faith thing. And a lot of businesses were closed today because of Easter. A lot of commerce is not happening because it is Easter. Now, it's also on a Sunday. It's always on a Sunday. But so I mean, our nation does understand the significance of this, even if not everybody fully buys into it. In fact, when I was at lunch, I did overhear some conversation. I don't try to eavesdrop on other people's conversations, but sometimes they make it really difficult not to. And I did hear a couple of gentlemen who were having their own little bit of theological discussion, or they would say it was theological discussion. I kind of got the impression neither of them really understood anything about theology, at least not near as much as they were acting like they were experts in. But I digress. What caught my attention was that one of them, clearly the much more cynical of the two, although I wouldn't say neither of them were what I would consider Bible believing Christians. I would not put either of them in that category, but they were at least educated as to biblical things, and at least I'll say Christian cliches. They knew the things to say, but they clearly didn't know why those things were being said. And I say that because of this. One of them says, I like this whole Easter holiday. I don't get this. Can you believe that people actually think this happened? That this guy came back to life, and then for 2,000 years we've been celebrating this fantasy. That's what one of them said. Now, of course, part of me wants to stand up and walk over their table and go, "Excuse me," but I know some people. I have some people I know that might have done that. But for me, I know what I believe, and I know why I believe it, and I am more than happy to help explain what I believe to somebody else. I'm more than happy to share what I believe with somebody else. But I never feel like it's my place to belittle them for believing something different. And I don't feel like I'm going to make any headway in trying to convince them that what I'm telling them has merit if I start off by insulting them, by diminishing and discounting what they think. So it's not really my approach for that. There are others who are quite skilled at that. I'm not. I'm not one of those people. So I just admit that right up front. But I heard that, and it did weigh on me. And I finished my lunch, and I left, and I came home, and I got back home, and I started getting ready to finish up some budgeting, some financial paperwork stuff that I have to do for work. And it did, but I just couldn't escape that phrase, that statement. And so I pondered it, and I realized, you know what? Let's front porch this. Let's just talk this thing out. So that's what I'm going to do here. Now, to me, this is the question: is the resurrection of Jesus relevant? Does it have relevance to us today? Now, first off, right out of the gate, if you are a Christian believer, if you are a follower of Christ, which is what that means, not just it's not just, well, yeah, I go to church. No, but if you actually believe in Christ and are a follower of Christ, that means you're a Christian. If you're not, if you don't really believe in the legitimacy of Jesus, if you don't believe he actually did and said the things that are recorded in the Bible, but you call yourself a Christian, I'm a little bit skeptical. It's like, are you really? You know, I'm not trying to judge, but those are kind of fundamentals. But if you are a solid Christian person that yes, I believe it. Well, obviously for you, the resurrection is absolutely important. In fact, I'm probably going to catch some flack for this, but I think the resurrection is actually more important than Jesus' birth. Now, of course, he had to be born into the human frail vessel for the ministry that he had to take place and for the crucifixion and resurrection to even happen. So the things had to go in the order they did, but just him being born is not that unique, is not that special. Oh, well, the virgin birth, that was special, yes. But what I'm saying is a prophet, a religious leader being born, that's not unique. Every religion in the world has their leaders who were born. That has to happen. But not every religion in the world at least lays claim to their religious leader, their founder, having been executed by his enemies and then coming back to life, continuing on in some ministry, and then ascending into heaven. That's a different part of the story than a lot or even most other religions have. And so for a real Christian believer, the resurrection of Jesus Christ is absolutely fundamental to the belief system. And so when I hear some people, mocking Christians and saying, I can't believe they believe that, and trying to tell that to other people, trying to expect other people to believe that, they should just, if you want to believe that, that's fine, but keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear about it. Okay, you obviously don't understand what it means to be a Christian. To be a Christian means you believe certain things, and because you believe those things, you feel an obligation, a responsibility to share those things with other people. That's just that's part of it. It's all one package deal. You don't get to pick and choose these things here. Otherwise, it's extreme selfishness. And the cliche example is if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody's house is on fire, well, it's not my house. I don't care. I'm going to keep walking. That's the mentality people think Christians should have. Just keep. You won't believe this? Okay, fine. But just keep your mouth shut. Don't be pushing it onto anybody else. Okay, yeah, but if I walk down the street and I see a neighbor's house is on fire, I should be running up to the door, pounding on the door, yelling, making sure, maybe even breaking in the door and trying to look inside the house to see if there's anybody who is overcome by smoke, anyone needs rescuing, calling 911, doing all this kind. I should be taking action to help save them from their fate. And that, again, is part and parcel of the Christian faith. If you are genuinely a Christian, you have that sense of obligation to your fellow man, fellow woman, humanity in general. So, for the Christian, the resurrection of Jesus, tantamount. Okay, and even if you don't believe in Christian, don't consider yourself a Christian. Hopefully, we can all agree that at least, yes, the concept of Jesus' resurrection is required in the Christian faith. It is a big part of that. Okay, so we'll agree on that, and we'll kind of scoot that over here for a moment. Not because it's not important, but because it's not where I want to take the rest of our conversation. We can agree on that. Now let's look at some other stuff. Let's talk about the people who don't really believe in that. Because, I mean, when you really stop and think about it logically, yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever. In fact, the entire story of Jesus makes no sense, especially that last week of his life, where he comes into the city of Jerusalem, everybody's praising him, and within 1 week, that same crowd that was praising him is yelling, "Crucify him," and they're celebrating and shouting. They're laughing at him and mocking him as he's bloodied, whipped, and dragging his own cross up to the hill of Golgotha, where he's going to be nailed to this cross and hung up for all to see until he dies. In 1 week. Well, actually, that's not quite so far-fetched. We see that happen all the time today. Think of any individual, politician, celebrity, sports person. It doesn't even need to be, can be just some local individual who has been loved and beloved until all of a sudden their name is splattered all over the media that they did this heinous thing. They did this error of judgment. They did this violation of something, and all of a sudden, everybody who loved and adored that individual turns on him just like that. And I do not want to compare Jesus to Donald Trump or vice versa, but Trump, Elon Musk, any of these individuals are people who were lauded, were loved. Everybody embraced them until they chose a side politically. And then suddenly some of the same people who loved them previously now condemn them. And the people wanting to sell off their Teslas. There was a time not long ago that we were touting everyone should get a Tesla to save the planet. And now, those Teslas, I can't have one of those. I want to get rid of it. So it's not really that big of a stretch to stop and think that the crowd could turn like that. The crowd that celebrated Jesus could turn on him so quickly and forcefully. We do see that happen. Well, but then there's the interrogation of him, or we would say the investigation, the examination that Pilate subjects Jesus to at the bequest of the religious leaders of the day. Or is it behest? I don't know. The be something. Anyway, in that, it was really one-sided, and he was set up from the beginning to be found guilty. That was what his accusers wanted. He was guilty, and nothing that was going to be done was going to disprove that. Well, I guess, wait a minute. We have that happen all the time today, too. We can think of examples all across the political spectrum where that kind of thing happens, where people get pronounced guilty before, not only before they're proven innocent, which is backwards the way it's supposed to be, but sometimes it doesn't even matter if they are pronounced innocent in the official court. Once public opinion has determined the person's guilty, they're just guilty. The court just got it wrong. We see that happen all the time. Now, we don't turn around and crucify those individuals, so that fortunately is a difference. Well, but even though we don't crucify them physically, we do crucify them in the court of public opinion and completely destroy their life and their identity. So, okay, well, there is that. Well, but then, okay, so Paul, maybe all of that stuff, maybe that stuff isn't so far-fetched. Maybe those things, there are parallels to us today. But the resurrection of Jesus? Come on. That he would die and come back to life? That makes no sense. It is impossible for our human brain to comprehend how that's even. And I'm happy for that. Say, oh, you're being willfully ignorant, Paul. You're being naive in your old age. No, because I was just as naive in my young age too. If I could explain it, if I could understand it, if I could replicate it as a human being, well, it wouldn't really be much of a divine, godlike thing to have happen now, would it? See, that was the final straw, the final miracle, the final event that would prove Jesus was who he said he had been all along. When he raised Lazarus from the dead, he stood there, and the Bible tells us he stood there and he prayed, he talked to God, and he said, I am talking to you not because I need you to hear me and do that, but because I need the people to hear me and know that I am doing this not for me, but for you. He was clearly sending this message and telegraphing what was to come too. And he told his disciples exactly what was going to happen, and anybody who listened. It was no secret. He knew even before he went to Jerusalem that the events of his crucifixion and resurrection were going to happen. So, is it relevant if you're not a Christian, the resurrection? Because I can't prove it. Nobody can prove it. It defies logic. There's nothing scientific about it, although I've heard different attempts to explain different things, try to rationalize and understand. Forget that. You're not a Christian? You don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus? Okay, fine. I'm not going to tell you have to. Again, to me, that's something you need to come to on your own. I can't force that on you. But the concept of Jesus' resurrection, I believe, is something that even if you are an atheist, the concept of Jesus' resurrection still holds tremendous power, at least on a symbolic level, that anyone can grab onto. Because the story of his resurrection, sorry, I get a little tingly when I think about this. You think about his disciples who had followed him all this time, and the crowds that had followed him that had diminished and they'd drift away, but there were still several who believed in him and were watching from afar out of fear. But the depth of pain and confusion, anger, abandonment, the range of emotion they must have felt when he died on that cross and was put in the tomb. I mean, it's unfathomable. And yet, when he comes back to life and he rolls the stone away and he walks out of that tomb and he's transfigured in a way that he's able to walk and talk with people that knew him really well and they don't even know that it's him. That's the bizarre thing. Their eyes are so closed to even recognizing that this is even possible. They don't see that. But then the lights go on. The people who had been his followers, they see him. Even Thomas, who gets a bad rap for being doubting Thomas, but the reality is he probably speaks for most of us. If we were in that situation, many of us would be just as skeptical. And he says, I'm not going to believe it until I see the nail prints in his hands and the gash in his side and his feet, the nail prints in his feet. And Jesus shows up and he says, hey, Thomas, go ahead. Touch my hands. Touch my side. Go ahead. Go ahead. It's all right. Go ahead. I want you to believe. And then he says, blessed are you for seeing and believing, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet still believe, because the resurrection is about belief. That's why I appreciate that we can't prove it, because if we could prove it, Thomas had it proven to him because Jesus was standing right there. But today, we have no way of proving it. And I like that, because it has to be about belief. And when you have that level of belief in something, that changes all the rules. That changes everything. The resurrection of Jesus is about more than just keeping a religion alive, more than just keeping the legend of a cult leader active. No. The resurrection of Jesus is about renewal. It is about forgiveness. It is about refreshing. It is about the biggest reset button in the world. Peter, he's in that upper room. He's licking his wounds after. He was brash and proclaimed Jesus. And Jesus said, no, before the rooster crows 3 times, you will have denied me. And Peter's like, no. And then he does. Peter denies him 3 times before the rooster crows. And Peter's living with his guilt, and he's wrestling with this. And then Jesus shows up, and Peter, heartsick, believes, I used to be really close to him, but now he'll never forgive me for what I did, how I abandoned him. And Jesus just forgives him. He doesn't have to prove himself. He doesn't have to jump through some hoops. He doesn't have to recite any prayers. He doesn't have to, Jesus just forgives him. And it's an amazing, powerful moment of transformation for Peter and for anybody that really digests that story. And I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of things in my life, way more than I want to remember, where I look back and I think, wish I hadn't done that. Wish I hadn't said that. I wish I could take that back. I wish I could change that. I wish I could do that different. You can't go back and do any of that. And there's a reality that with all of those missteps, they help shape who we are. So there's value that comes out of that if we learn our lesson. If you just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again, well, then that's on you, buddy. But not all the mistakes that we make, if we learn from them, not all the mistakes are truly mistakes. They're growth opportunities if we take them that way. But there are some of those things that I find it hard to forgive myself on. Just like Peter. But then there's days like today, Easter Sunday, where we are encouraged to have a mindset of renewal. I don't think it's any coincidence at all that even though this is not the time that Jesus was crucified and Easter Sunday keeps moving, Easter Sunday always falls very close to the start of spring, which is also a time of refreshing and renewal. I don't think that's by coincidence at all. And I think the two fit very closely together. And what I'm trying to say is that even if you don't believe in Jesus, even if you don't believe the resurrection was possible and could have happened, the concept of the resurrection is still such powerful symbolism that it's still worth you celebrating, because it means you can be different. You can say, you know what? I don't like the person that I've been. I can be somebody new. I don't like the things in my life that have been happening. I could go a different direction. I am not pleased with myself for the decisions that I've made. I can make new ones. I can chart a new course for my life. See, to me, even aside from the religious fundamental significance of Jesus' resurrection as a Christian believer, for me, the resurrection of Jesus on a symbolic level has all this other rich meaning. That if we can tap into that, I tell you, it will literally change your life. Now, of course, if you tap into it over here, that'll literally change your life too. But that's, again, I'm not trying to be pushy about the religion part. But the notion that we can stop worrying about celebrating Jesus' resurrection, that Easter is a passé holiday, that we should just erase it off the map, and if church people want to go do the thing, but we should stop commemorating it as a culture, I think is completely wrong. Completely wrong. And to do that, honestly, I think would be to our detriment. Not just because of my religious preference over here, but because of the symbolism of what it means over here. There's so much hope and potential and new, fresh energy that comes from the symbolism of Jesus' resurrection, that to discard that, in my opinion, would simply be insanity. You think I'm crazy for believing in the resurrection of Jesus? I think you're crazy if you want to just cast it aside. So there you go. We have a standoff, but it's my show, so I get to win. But seriously, if anybody's watching, if you ever want to have a conversation about this, not a debate, I'm not interested in debating these things, but if you want to have a rational conversation about any of these kind of topics, I'm more than happy to have that conversation. I would love to have that conversation with you. Just let me know. Maybe we can even have them on the front porch sometime. But for now, I do have that work stuff that I have to do, and I'm hopeful that now I can get my head wrapped around the spreadsheets again and get focused on it, because I've got this off my chest. So thank you for indulging me. And with that, I wish you all a happy Easter 2025, and I'll see you next time from my front porch.